The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
With regulation being a major theme at CoinDesk's annual consensus conference last week, influential lawmakers took to the stage to discuss the latest updates on crypto legislation and the possible outcomes for 2023 and beyond. Joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, and he, of course, is also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick. Have you recovered?
Good morning. Yes, it was a very relaxing weekend. Have you recovered? Yes. I did.
I think so. I think the two of us just really put in a lot. I mean, my voice kind of survived to the very end, but it was pretty shaky by the end of it. You can probably still hear a tinge of it now, but it was great. It was excellent. Really, truly a big affair. So, I mean, you rounded it up. You finished the whole thing with the sit down with Senator Cynthia Lummis, who was there in person, and then you had the live remote feed from Congressman Patrick McHenry that actually, I think, got us a bit of news. What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I think the big thing was, I asked Congressman McHenry if he believed that we would see a crypto-specific law signed in the next 12 months. And he said yes. And, obviously, Congress has been working on crypto legislation for quite a while now. We've been hearing about, for example, a stablecoin bill since last year. But hopes for the rapid passage of any kind of law were really dashed during a recent hearing when Congressman Maxine Waters, who is McHenry's counterpart on the House Financial Services Committee, said he needs to start from scratch on the stablecoin bill. So the fact that he seemed confident in the ability of Congress to get a law through within the next year, addressing anything really, I think that really stood out. That's something that the industry has been clamoring for quite a while now. And if it happens, then it'll be, I think, the first piece of crypto-specific legislation that, is exclusive to crypto that gets signed in Congress.
We had we ran a poll with our attendees, and we announced it on Friday morning, the results of those. Interestingly, actually, no surprise perhaps, more than 90%, I think it's probably 95%, had said something like, regulation is the biggest challenge facing the industry. And also, I think the consensus seemed to be that people didn't see any comprehensive crypto legislation coming until, 2024, basically into the next presidential term. So, I mean, he's got rose-colored glasses here? Is this just sort of, because that seems like a rather optimistic take? Or do you think there really is, despite all of the rhetoric and politicization that seems to be going on, an opportunity for people to come together and get something done?
I think the big thing is, obviously his role is pretty influential. So if anyone could make it happen, it would be the leaders of the House Financial Services Committee. I think the fact that he does seem to have a very close working relationship with Waters as his counterpart is also another helpful sign. The big question for me remains the Senate. Will Senator Sherrod Brown, who is the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, and Senator Tim Scott, who is the ranking member, be persuaded to take on any kind of comprehensive crypto legislation, or even a narrowly tailored version of a bill? And so far, I haven't really seen anything one way or another. I haven't heard from anyone who has heard anything on this, but that's the question, right? If Senators Brown and Scott are on board, then the chances of anything happening go up dramatically. If they remain, kind of aloof as they are right now, then, I would say, yes, it does look like a little bit like rose-colored glasses there.
So it wasn't the only session you moderated, of course. You also chatted with Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Graywall. After the crypto exchange received its Wells notice from the SEC, and of course there's a lot of talk about Coinbase potentially relocating offshore. I mean, they did take out a derivatives license in Bermuda that was newsworthy a week or so ago. So what struck you most about what Graywall had to say?
That's an interesting one, right? The question is, will the SEC sue Coinbase? And it sure seems like the answer is yes, that's going to happen. I asked Paul Graywall about it, and he said that his words were something along the lines of he remains optimistic, but he has to prepare for everything, which seemed to me to be kind of a tacit admission that yeah, this is happening. They're going to face a lawsuit. I don't see Coinbase going offshore just yet. The U.S. user base is pretty large, and there's a lot of capital here. And Paul said something along the lines of like 20% of the company's customers are currently from outside the U.S., which is a big number, but not that big relative to how many customers it has. So I think my big takeaway there is we're going to see a lawsuit, and once that's filed, we'll have a bit more information on what exactly the SEC finds concerning about Coinbase's business. When that happens, we'll probably also get, probably the clearest view yet into just how the SEC would like to regulate the U.S. crypto industry. Although we're certainly seeing hints already through some of the more recent, actions with BitREX and Biaxi.
And your overall impression of other parts of consensus? I mean, regulation was a big theme. We also had like international regulators talking on stage as well.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is, and I think I said something along the lines of this for the newsletter that came out on Friday, but all of these discussions are happening at the same time as all of these regulators and policymakers are actively involved in doing things right now. It's not that everyone took a week off to talk about it. In years past, we've seen, the lawmaker town hall, for example, happen during a recess, so Congress was not in session. We've seen, debates about such as the markets and crypto assets legislation in the European Union kind of happening, but no active work. This year, everyone was very actively involved in the same issues that they were talking about. Those, actions were proceeding. So, I think it does lend a much greater sense of urgency to those discussions that we held. I think it was pretty interesting that we were able to hold them. That pretty cool, honestly, that we were able to get those folks into a room to talk about literally what they're going to do when they got off the plane back home and what they were doing right before they got on the plane to come to Austin.